I'm John Gogliatino.
I'm Doris Hanley.
I'm Bobo Potsner.
I'm Nadia Gurwa.
I'm Michelle Blanchard. Welcome to 30 Minutes. Welcome to 30 Minutes. I am your host, Michelle Blanchard. With me today are two business advisors with the Connecticut Small Business Development Center, Denise Whitford and Nelson Mershon, and we are going to be talking about how the Small Business Center helps existing small business owners as well as those establishing a new small business. Denise, Nelson, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to be here.
I'm going to allow you to give a more formal introduction of yourself. Nelson, if you wouldn't mind starting.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
Yes.
SBDC, the Small Business Development Center, is a free service available to any person who is planning to start a business or an existing business. In my case, I work out of the Danbury Chamber of Commerce and also the Waterbury Chamber of Commerce. And my coverage area is from Richfield to New Fairfield, Bethel, Danbury, Oxford, and all the towns all the way to Waterbury. But the SBDC covers the whole state, and we have a team that works very hard for the clients.
And how did you get involved in the SBDC? I'm going to use that acronym, the SBDC.
So I used to be, I had my own business and I decided to do volunteer work and I decided to join SCORE. So I was an advisor with SCORE for a while. I eventually became the chairman of SCORE. And
for those viewers who don't know what SCORE is, could you just kind of talk a little bit about that?
Yes, SCORE is a group of mostly retired people who have a lot of experience and they give back to the community by providing free business advising.
Okay.
So at some point, my business the revenue went down and I decided to find a job. And I was lucky to get this job from the SBDC. And I have been doing a business advisor for the last 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how are you affiliated with Western Connecticut University?
So the university, Dr. Clark, the president of the university, has been a big promoter of small businesses. And so he's a good friend of the SBDC, and we love to partner with the university. They have an internship, they have an entrepreneurship program, and it's just an amazing local university that is promoting, they want the best for their students, and we love to partner with the university.
Right, absolutely. And what a great way to get the younger generation involved in entrepreneurship and owning their own business.
Yeah, definitely. Dr. Clark has a lot of experience with business owners and students and developing that interest for businesses. He started a place for students and staff to get together and talk about business called The Garage. And it's just an amazing concept for the greater Danbury area.
Thank you for that. And Denise, tell us about yourself.
Yes, I'm a business advisor in Central Connecticut, and I cover the area from northern Massachusetts all the way down through Hartford and into Middletown. The majority of the work that I do is at the Department of Economic and Community Development. I also spend quite a bit of time at the Department of Commerce in Middletown. A lot of the opportunities that I offer come with international trade and being a certified global business professional. A lot of the businesses out around the airport, for example, will do a lot of exporting because there is a free trade zone in that area, so I focus an awful lot of time there.
Right. And you and I were talking a little bit about the show, so we have something in common. You also used to be in the financial services industry when you were a little younger.
Yes, I was. Part of my background is insurance and financial services. I served throughout Central Connecticut in a number of larger banks, and it just made the natural tie in coming to the SBDC.
Absolutely.
Because one of the number one reasons people come to us is access to capital, and we do an awful lot of coaching and advising and helping them put their loan packages together.
So walk us through how you help existing small business owners.
So when somebody wants to start a business, we help them to make sure that the business is going to be profitable. So in many occasions, having a business plan makes sense.
And do you help them with the business plan?
So we guide them.
Okay.
Yeah, we give them templates that are modern, that are interactive, that allows other users to edit or comment. And we want to make sure that that business plan is solid and that is real and that eventually that business plan is going to open the doors to running a business that is more likely to be successful. So profits matter.
Right, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And do you also help businesses that are looking to, or help people rather, do you help them if they're looking to get into like a franchise, or are there any parameters as to how you help the small businesses?
So anybody who wants to start a business, a for-profit business, we want to help them. And again, the service is free, it's confidential, and we want to provide a lot of value. So we help people who want to start a business, and we also help small businesses that have, less than 200 or so employees. So we want those businesses to continue growing. Some businesses complain that they don't have access to capital, so
Right.
access to capital is a priority for us. We want to make sure that whatever the bank or the lending institution is asking, that we can help the business owner to access it, whether it's a business plan, financial projections, market research, maybe they need financial benchmarking. So it's a whole package.
Right.
And we want to decline to access the money if all the fundamentals are there to access that money, whether it's a community bank, a regional bank, a national bank, or maybe even a nonprofit. In some cases, we help with venture capital if the client is ready for that.
Right. And how many small businesses would you say that you help in a year? Is it ongoing, or is it more of a one-time service?
I think on average, a number of years that we've been at Yukon, it's been averaging around 600 to 900. That's the number of clients that actually come through the process with the advisors. In an average year, we will have anywhere between 2,500 and 3,500 clients contact us.
Right, I would think the number would be high.
Some of them are directed over to online training, and some of those are also referrals where they have to self-educate and continue to move on. So it is a very high number.
Right, right. So let's kind of circle back to helping the small business and talk a little bit about your specialty in helping with exports.
Great, great. A lot of the opportunities that we have with exporting are explored outside of the, not just Hartford area, but it's across the state. So exporting, as you may be aware of, is any kind of product or service that the company would offer, and it would be moved or sold in another country. So a lot of folks think they have to have a plastic cup or some kind of machining tool, and actually consulting is actually growing. We're moving a lot more export through the terms of consulting, particularly in IT and medical types of consulting in other countries.
Oh, interesting. How? Walk me through how that would work.
A lot of clients will come to us, and what we want to try to do is assess what they do and see if they're ready to export. So there's a capacity that we want to see. Do they have the knowledge? Do they have the experience? The capacity in which they look at isn't just money. It's going to be, do they have a supply chain that's ready? And is their staffing ready? So once we do that assessment, then we begin to look at the market penetration. Would they be able to go into another country? And where would that low-hanging fruit be? What countries are importing those types of products or services? And we try to make those connections.
Right, right. And we were talking earlier about the challenges of exports relative to the other countries, and maybe a lack of labor laws, maybe more of a moral or ethical issue as to natural resources. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Those are good points, and I think that when we export, there's clearly advantages and there are clearly disadvantages or risks that come with exporting. So as we start looking at some of the risks that are associated with that, is there's an economic risk in that we can outsource a lot of the labor to other countries, and then when we outsource that labor, they don't go by the same laws that we do here in the United States. So when we begin to export, our role is to help our clients become more familiar with what those challenges might be. That's why we try to encourage our clients to work within the free trade agreements across the world. When that happens, both countries have a vested interest in making sure that the economic and social impacts of exporting mean positive things for both countries.
Right, and for the business itself.
Clearly.
Yeah, absolutely. So how would one go about registering and getting help with the Connecticut Small Business Development Center?
The main way that we ask and invite folks to come to the SBDC is go to our website of www.ctsbdc.com. Once they come into our system, it takes literally 2 minutes to complete a request for business advising. Our advisors are constantly looking at that intake process. We reach out to them with a welcome letter. We give them an opportunity then to load all of their documentation if they need to in a private, confidential way. And then we begin to have conversations with them either virtually, over the phone, or even face to face.
So kind of walk me through a scenario. If I wanted to establish a new business, I would reach out to you, and I haven't done anything. So do I need to start doing some homework for myself before contacting you, or can I reach out to you and then, have you kind of take the ball and guide me as to what I need to be doing, in addition to using your resources, of course, to help?
So I think it's good to do some homework before the client meets with us. But if that homework hasn't been done, we can have that first conversation to see, what the business idea is all about, and maybe in some cases we want to take a quick look at the numbers. So if you're planning to open a hot dog stand and you want to make $10,000 every month, and your strategy is to charge less than the competition, it's going to be difficult. So if you look at the numbers for the first year, you're going to get a good idea of the likelihood of that business to actually work.
So, the viability, right?
Yes. So we love to do to test, and we love to make sure that without spending money, that we can really get a good sense of the opportunity in the market. So that's quite important.
Right.
So if we are starting a restaurant, I think that I'm a great cook, so we can invite some friends for dinner.
So market testing.
Yes,
Right.
and if they don't ask for more or seconds, that might be an indication that the meal was not that great. And so that's an easy way to start testing some concepts. So product validation is quite important.
Right.
I think to that point, Nelson brings up a really good point, is we will take clients in both of those areas. It's always a great idea if they have their business plan and their financials and maybe a project description as to what they might want to do as far as growth. But we do have a lot of online courses that we can guide them through, and then our one-on-one confidential face-to-face meetings as well. When it comes down to exporting, however, it's a little bit different animal. And we really like to do that assessment to see if they're ready, and then make sure that they have the proper pieces in place for the planning as well as market implementation on an export plan. And that's really where we take that deeper dive. Exporting comes with a slightly different challenge.
Right. How does the government help companies export?
Great question. At the state level and the federal level, there's a couple of different ways. I'm going to cover just a couple of them here.
Absolutely.
The main one that we look at is the Department of Commerce. And when clients come through us and they're new to export, our objective is to take them over to the Department of Commerce and figure out what we can do as far as making introductions into other channels in other countries. We have contacts throughout the world that would be able to do that. Similar to what the SBDC would do here, is bring them through those channels. Another way might be working with XM Bank and working through the SBA. The Small Business Administration offers a number of different channels to provide a 90% guarantee on the loan products that the client is going through their bank. So it can be an Export Express loan, working capital loan. It can also be an international trade loan. Now, some of those loans start off at a maximum of $500,000, and others go up to $5 million, depending upon what the need is. But again, if you're creating a new channel, you're going to need to have funding in place and a bank by your side.
Right, absolutely.
And I think the third way that I'd like to talk about briefly is the state of Connecticut, Department of Economic and Community Development. We have a STEP program, which is the State Technical Expansion Program. There's a lot of acronyms in this business, so we've got to try to think them through once in a while.
You're doing very well, by the way.
Thank you. So when we work with DECD, the Department of Economic and Community Development, that program is really designed to help small businesses begin to take their product internationally by helping them market it. It'll help them get into trade shows and technical opportunities to market their product in international areas. Sometimes there are sponsored shows that the DECD will go to, and we will certainly invite folks to go there. And again, collaborating with commerce, there's opportunities to have events here in the United States, here in Connecticut, and we'll invite them into the Department of Commerce as well.
Right. And what are the biggest countries that you see the exports, or that you're working with the companies to export to?
It's really unilateral. Clearly in the free trade agreements here, NAFTA between Mexico and Canada is a big one, between the EU and Europe in general. And then we also have clearly China, some of the top countries that import as well as we export.
And can you tell us about some companies that you're currently working with exporting?
Nelson and I have recently worked with several that are beginning to look at Canada as an easy dip into being our next door neighbor and exporting. The one that sticks out in my mind recently is I've been with them for about 4 years, and I can't disclose their name, but they work with a lot of the NATO countries, providing military types of fiber optic lighting, and we've worked with them in a number of ways to help them shore up contacts and expanding their supply chain channels in several other countries. We've also looked at how they market their organization. How can we penetrate that market if we're not advertising and marketing correctly?
Right.
And then we've also looked at the financial side. How can we leverage where their current banking relationships are and expand them, but also bring other government sources together with workforce development dollars through the Connecticut Department of Labor.
Right.
So those were 3 challenges that they had, and over the past couple of years, we've been able to stabilize their sales and actually help them ramp them up.
Interesting, very interesting.
Yeah, we work very closely with the SBA, and we did an event at the Danbury Chamber of Commerce recently, and some of the clients got excited about the opportunity to export. You know, Canada is so close; it's less than 8 hours, and so we are planting the seeds. There is another client of ours, Luke's Toy Factory, and they are an amazing company. It's made in the U.S., beautiful toys that are friendly to our children. And some company in Europe found them, and they say, you know, we love your toys. You know, we want to have them.
Found them through the trade shows, or how? Because I'm trying to make the connection and how.
I don't know exactly the way they connected, but it was interesting that that this company in Europe identified a product, and just by having a good product that is made in the U.S. is a big plus. So let's see, the company is now working on the packaging, and pretty soon will be exporting to Europe, and that's exciting.
Right.
A new company, a small company, finding opportunities not just in the U.S. but in the world.
That's a good point, and I think that when you find people globally finding us, one of the best ways that we hear our clients say they are found is because they have a great website. And one of the added features that we try to do is help them globalize that website so that if they have clients in other countries, we want to make it culturally acceptable in that country,
Right,
but also adaptable enough so that they can not only find us, but they can use the right technology. We're very fortunate to have, I think it's like 6G or 5G here, 3G, 4G. Other countries have not that much power. So we want to make sure that those websites are ready to go. We have a pet food company, for example, that was accidentally found by a country in near China, and they started to export and didn't have all the pieces together, and unfortunately that product sat on the dock for 6 months. Although they were able to get the product back, we helped them reconfigure how they looked at packaging, to Nelson's point, as well as the compliance. What were the tariffs? What was the way the documentation had to go through in the Incoterms? So those kinds of things are really important. And then we redesigned that and said, you know, the best way to do this is going to be going through Canada for you at this time, because Canada is in need of having pet food products brought into it at this time.
Right.
So you know, that's a great example, is that sometimes the tariffs or the documentation, when it comes to compliance, we have to make sure the documentation, the T's are crossed, the I's are dotted.
Right.
Otherwise, your product gets stuck on the dock.
Right, not to mention the financial ramifications of that, not small of an error, but just that, you know, when you think about it, that's a paperwork issue, could have that
Exactly.
ramification.
And part of our advice has to do with the online presence. So how is your website? Is it mobile friendly? You know, does it have the right information? I know websites that cannot be found. because they were not built correctly, and maybe they are old, and that's not good because it's going to be more difficult for a company overseas to find us. So the online presence is important, and we need to be ranked high.
And what would be an example of not being able to find a website? I'm just out of curiosity.
Well, one of the issues might be that their language is different, and using Google Translate is not necessarily the most accurate as far as the cultural values that are coming across. It may translate in a very rough sense. I think the best example is when we have a website here in America, we really enjoy having a lot of photos. And when you have that in another country, it doesn't come across the same way. It takes a long time to boot that website, and so they get disgusted and move to the next one. Additionally, when you translate literally something like, we want to sell pet food, it doesn't translate the same in every country, and therefore the space on that page changes. And so does the positioning of the words and the characters. So we have to be very sensitive to how that lays out.
Wow. And who is in charge of doing that?
Nelson and I do that a little bit, but I think that there are several consultants that we have that come together and reduce their fees in a very significant way, as well as the U.S. Department of Commerce in Middletown. They will work with them at no cost to get those pages up, or at least a landing page where the clients can be found.
Yeah, I would think that would be very, very manual process.
It is.
Yeah.
But it's short term, and I think that it's well worth the time and the energy and money to do that, because once you've opened up that channel and you have one client, let's just pick Germany. If you have one client in Germany, our objective would be to help you reach much more clients in Germany, because then it becomes much more cost effective and profitable for you in that channel.
To export, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So what questions haven't I asked that you feel we need to get across to the viewers?
Well, the most important part is that it's a free service, and our service is confidential, and we want to provide value. We really work hard for our clients, and I know so many cases. We know so many cases of people who start a business with a great idea and with big plans, and sometimes they lose the money, they lose the investment, and it can be whatever the amount of money. It's significant for the investor, for the entrepreneur. So there are ways to avoid that. So we working together, we want to reduce the chances that the business will not be profitable. And on the other side, businesses wants to grow, and if they need money to buy new machines or new equipment, we want them to access that money quickly.
Right, there's a fine balance between a business startup. When I started my practice about 13 years ago, our attorney advised us, I believe he said 80% of new small businesses fail in the first 5 years. Yeah. I don't know if that statistic is still true today, but
there is a very high number of businesses that fail, and I think that many times when we start looking at how they will export, we don't want our clients to go in as an accidental success and then try to backpedal and lose money. So we work diligently with them to look at the planning process to make sure that their documentation is correct in a strategic business plan. We also look at how they're going to market their business in those countries, again, so they are very successful with the right tools in place, and then how they're going to pay for that in building their capacity, their people and their process, as well as their financing through those terms of education. And then the last component is going to be to make sure that compliance and regulatory issues and Incoterms, making sure their product gets from their door to their customer's door unscathed, reducing those risks. So I think that if there was something that I would say to anyone who's interested in exporting, please consider that.
Absolutely. You've raised a lot of good points. Thank you for that. And just circling back to small businesses and thinking about starting a new small business, are there certain businesses that you've worked with in the past where you feel are more cost prohibitive? Like, what comes to my mind is running a restaurant. I think that would be very time consuming and very hard to establish. I could be wrong.
So within 4 blocks of this facility, there used to be a restaurant. And unfortunately, for different reasons, the restaurant failed. Now there is a new restaurant there, Gisella's Ristorante, Italian restaurant, and they didn't need to have a grand opening. They just opened reservations. And the parking lot was full, and it was just exciting to see a different way to start a restaurant.
Right.
And it happens because they know what they're doing. They are very well known in the community.
Right.
Their food is amazing. So what can we learn from that experience to
Exactly.
do something similar to our new business? And those teachings can be applied in many different businesses. So the bottom line is good to have a plan and be strategic when we start a business.
Right.
Every now and then I hear about opening a new gym in Danbury. So it's expensive,
Right.
and the
There's a
likelihood that
substantial
will
startup
happen.
cost, yeah.
Yeah, and it's risky.
To that point, I think looking at whatever the barriers are, whether we're working here in the United States or here in Danbury or anywhere else, I think we should know what the risks are and be prepared to mitigate those risks in
Worst
some
case
way.
scenario.
So, I would agree with that. Barriers to entry, depending upon the industry, can be very costly, but I would say that in most cases, businesses that are very, very intensive with high numbers of employees and a high touch rate with their customers require a lot of customer service, a lot of checking back. Those risks and those costs can be monumental. And so, as Nelson is saying, having a good plan in place and being able to understand how to mitigate those risks, whether it's a U.S. Channel of distribution or it be international, wise to have a good team of advisors and a board on your side.
And especially in this day and age where everything is so, there, we have the internet, we have Instagram, Facebook, we have Yelp. Everybody is so quick to provide a review, especially on a restaurant,
Right.
that you really need to be able to educate the owners to be aware of exactly.
I would agree.
what
I
can
think
happen.
being able to be responsive in a proactive way in today's world, we can have a handheld device that we can instantly make a complaint or we can instantly choose to give a compliment.
Right,
And
right.
for a business owner, you've got to be prepared to respond to both of those in an affirmative, positive, supportive way.
Absolutely.
You're an expert in that area, so I think that
We have,
Yes,
I
and-
think,
and
about a
it's-
minute left, so.
And it's quite important to have a team. You have to have a good team. Your accountant, your bookkeeper, your social media person. So everything has to be there because it's impossible for the business owner to do everything.
Yes,
And sometimes
absolutely.
we do that. We want to do the bookkeeping, we want to do the buying, we want to do the advertising, we want to do everything. And it's challenging.
Yeah.
So work with a good team.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. We are going to be wrapping up, so why don't you provide your website address again and yours as well?
So the website for the whole state of Connecticut is citysbdc.com, and that's for Connecticut Small Business Development Center. citysbdc.com. Free service, confidential, and valuable service.
And Denise?
absolutely. We operate out of the same website. Again, it's ctsbdc.com. Anything that you need as far as starting your business, growing it, both domestically and internationally, would look forward to working with you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us on this episode of 30 Minutes. Take care.